Hey everyone, welcome back to the IE427 garage. We have had a change of plans. I know I promised all you guys a carpet install today, but we got some parts. Stay tuned. Alright everyone, we are going to be working on the engine today. I'm hoping to get the clutch assembly all fastened to the back of the engine. We got our Coolant Crossover kit. So that's going to be going on the car, on the back of the engine anyway, not in the car yet. And with that, we should be able to mount up our bell housing, get our brand new TKX transmission bolted all to the back of the bell housing, and hopefully drop this motor in today. So stay tuned as we get going on all that. All right, so what I've been working on is getting all of the stuff put on the back of the motor here. You can see we got our crossover kit here that takes the coolant flow from the driver's side head and now connects it to what was only a passenger side outlet for the heater. So now with this stainless braided tube, it connects the two cylinder heads together. We still maintain our heater feed from the water pump, and now we have the return still going into the passenger head, but we've added a coolant crossover to the driver's side of the car. So this is supposed to stop the dreaded lifter tick for the number 7 cylinder. I'm not familiar with that particular issue, but since Michael has been researching this engine for quite some time, he felt that it was a good preventative measure since we had the engine out to add this. So we've got that taken care of, and I have got the clutch assembly bolted to the back of the freshly machined flywheel. We have the block plate, or I don't even know if they call this one a block plate because it's not a plate. It's like a giant U. But that gives us the ability to put the starter in the right location and gives us just a little bit of space in between the back of the block and the bell housing. So the clutch is on the car as well. The reason we had to change the clutch is because we have a differing spline count on what was a TK. Is it a TK? No, a T3650 from the donor car, and now this one, I believe that was a 10 spline, and then this one is like a 30 spline count or a 31 spline count. So we have a different spline count on the front of the transmission, and so we had to change out the clutch anyway. So since we had to do that, we machined the flywheel. We've got the new clutch installed. It's ready to go. I'm hoping tomorrow morning that I'm going to be able to get the bell housing bolted up, get the transmission bolted up to the back of the bell housing, and hopefully get this put in the car. So I'm going to let you guys go for now, and I will catch up with you in the morning as I'm putting all that stuff in. All right, things don't always go as expected. So this is a Tremec bell housing, and you would think Tremec makes one-piece transmissions for all of the OEMs, so you think they would have this down. However, when we started fitting this bell housing, we started having problems right here in the corner and over on this side as well, where the bosses are for some of the bolts. And on the one side, it's the boss for the locating dowel. On the other side, it's one of the bottom bolts. And we actually had interference with the flywheel. I was bolting it up, and I always like to turn the crank on the engine just to make sure that the splines So the crank on the engine will turn with a breaker bar, just to make sure that as we're sliding the transmission in, that the splines of the transmission are engaging in the spline in the clutch disc. And so as I'm doing this, I'm tightening it up a little more, checking it, tightening it up a little more. It starts getting harder and harder to turn. And so what I did is I pulled the entire thing off. I like bolting the bell housing to the transmission and then fitting it to the back of the engine, simply because you have to deal with less of the issues trying to align the clutch fork as you're pushing it in. So doing that, it makes it really hard. But once I figured out what the problem was, what I did is I just pulled the bell housing off. I bolted it right to the back of the motor. And as I was tightening it down, I noticed resistance, real tough resistance on this one corner. And so I took it off, and I saw that the flywheel, the teeth on the flywheel for the starter, were actually grinding into the aluminum of the bell housing. So I took it off, grabbed the angle grinder with a flap disc, and started to grind it down. Then I fit it again. I must have fit it 6 different times before it finally didn't make any noise as it was going around. And I would make sure I did a full revolution of the engine, so that just in case there was any run out on the teeth on the flywheel, that I wouldn't have any issue with it just catching on one spot. Now, it would turn and it probably would self-clearance, but you don't need all those metal shavings, you know, inside the bell housing. As it is, you're going to get clutch dust and what have you from the friction material in there once you start using the car. So better to get it all out now. So what I did is I got it to that point, and then I ground it a little more in each location. I ground it a little more here, and I ground it a little bit more up here. So now there's no clearance issues at all with it. It's got probably a 1/16 to an 1/8 inch clearance all the way around on both sides. Then what I was doing, I initially set it up so that I didn't have any preload on the throw-up bearing. And using the stock pivot from the old transmission, which I have here, it was preloading the back of the clutch spline fingers just way too much. And so I had to grab another pivot that I had upstairs, and I had to check the distance from the back of the block to the face of the fingers, and then from the face of the bell housing to the face of the throw-out bearing. And right now I've got just about 2/100ths, something like that. So there's just a little bit of free play, but in order to get that, I also had to take off the counterweight. This counterweight goes on the back of the stock clutch arm in this kind of orientation. And what that does is it puts a little weight behind the clutch arm. So as you're engaging and disengaging, if there's just a little bit of chatter in the clutch, that it kind of helps to smooth that out. So normally I like to keep these on there because they help, so there isn't so much clutch chatter as the clutch wears in. But in this case, I couldn't use it. It even looks like Tremec, in their infinite wisdom, made 2 notches, one on the top and one on the bottom, for the clutch arm to recess in there. So I figured, well, if those recessors are there, they must know that people aren't going to run that counterweight, and so we're not going to put it on. So this is just about ready to go into the back of the engine. If you'll notice, I put this up on a table, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to lower down the shop crane to just the right height, and then we're going to bring this into the back of the front of the transmission, and we're going to mate the two together. And if everything goes according to plan, which it should have in the beginning, we'll have this all mated up today, and we'll see about maybe even popping it in the car. I still have to pull out the surge tank and some other things, but we're going to try to get to that as well. If not, we'll get to it in this video. It'll just be the following day. All right, everybody, I fast forwarded just a little bit. I'm going to show you how I do this. You can do this at home even if you don't have a 4-post or a 2-post lift. I don't think this would really work on a 2-post. You'd really have to work out on the engineering to get it done that way. But anyways, what you can see is I've got the back of the car elevated. It's up about, on the tires, it's probably up about 12 inches. I did have it higher. It does make it easier. But if you only want to do it once, you only want to adjust it once, 12 inches is like the magic number. So 12 inches off the ground in the back, and then using the load leveler for the engine crane does make it easy because you can move the pivot to the back to get the transmission almost level and slide it right in. So what I do in the beginning is I've got the back end of the car up about 2 feet, and I've got the angle on the engine and the trans just tilted down a bit just to get it into the tunnel, and as I am pushing it in, I'm lowering the car, and now I've got it about 12 inches off the ground, and I have got it to where the transmission is just about where it needs to be. You can see I've got that strap to hold it up so it doesn't fall down off of the rear chassis support. In the front, I've got the front bolt in here, but I did use a ratchet strap to level the engine as I was putting it in, and you can see I have it caught. Let me get my flashlight. I have the ratchet strap caught right inside there. So I grabbed another ratchet strap. I'm going to grab the motor mount from a different spot just to hike it up, and then I'll pull that out and then get the bolt for the engine mount dropped in there, and it should be in. So I will catch back up with you as soon as I've got this thing sitting inside the chassis. All right, she's in. It's not sitting quite perfect. I am going to get this on the lift and maneuver it a little bit from underneath, but I do want to get the transmission cross brace in place first rather than just having it on a ratchet strap. And once I get that done and get it on the lift, I will get you guys back here and show you exactly what it looks like all put back in. All right, later in the day, we did get the engine and transmission in the car. We do have some issues though. The transmission, the TKX transmission, is shorter as far as where the mounting tab is in relationship to the factory 5 A-frame. So we're going to have to make a bracket, and then on top of that, we're going to have to raise the back of the transmission up about 3/4 of an inch, because I've got it resting on the lift jack right now, which is holding it high enough so that the universal joint of the drive shaft does not hit the 4-inch round tube cross member. So we not only have to make a bracket, but we have to raise it up. So that's something we can make here in the shop. We did get the drive shaft attached and the bolts torqued down, because raising or lowering the transmission for the mounts isn't going to make any difference, and I was here and I wanted to get that done. So that's done. At the front of the engine, however, we have a different problem. Because this is an early Mark III, and I'm assuming that is the only iteration of the Mark series that we have a problem with this, we are at the bottom of the engine mounts, meaning the studs for the engine mounts are resting on the bottom of the slots cut in the factory 5 engine pads on both sides, and we still have space in there. So what we're going to have to do is I reached out to one of our family members, Jeff Collins. Jeff owns Whitby Motorsports in, I believe, North Carolina. And Jeff is going to send me out some spacers just for the 4.6 and modular motors. So I think that includes the 5-liter Coyotes as well. So I talked to him this afternoon, and those are going to be on the way, hopefully in the morning. The engine's in, it's sitting there. We can start doing some of the dress items. We can pull off the valve covers, get the headers started and stuff like that. I would like to get the spacers in before I put in the headers, but we're just going to play that by ear. So that's where we are with that. Okay, I think that's going to do it for today. We really needed to take this opportunity to get the engine back in the car. We have another project coming into the shop here really soon, and it just made sense once we got those crossover 2 parts for the back of the engine to get those taken care of and get the engine back in the car. Regardless of the setbacks and the problems we've had with spacers and the mounts and stuff like that, those are easily remedied with the engine in the car, so it's not a big deal. We are going to jump on the carpeting here really soon. I think it's going to be the next video, but we'll see how that goes. Again, I thank you guys all for watching. Those of you that are new, go ahead and do the like, share, subscribe, and all that stuff, because it does help the channel grow, and we're appreciating seeing all of the comments and the likes that we're getting, and you know, again, making the channel grow. So that's really cool. We'll see you guys all next time. Have a great day.